We did choosing your own length adventure last time, and I feel like I was highly opinionated. This time is also going to be a highly opinionated choose your own girth adventure. It's like having a bad Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master who shoehorns you into whatever story, but whatever. This is my channel, I do what I want. So we're going to go over the girth. We're going to go over the girth, and I'm going to explain how I set up my routines based off of all this. This is basically my own framework. This is a lot of my books stuff. So if you want the specific teachings from that, either dig around on this channel, everything's free, or you can get the streamlined version at peakmalphysique.com. Link will be in the description below. Additionally, I'll be talking about strain and expansion in this video. There will be a calculator on Peak Physique under the tools tab for you guys to easily calculate it without having to think about it too much. So let's get started. For girth, we have 4 main criteria, very similar to length. We have massage and expansion, hypoxia and retention. Now, the only true thing we need to gain girth is going to be expansion, because that's what's going to change the tissue shape over time. But massage is going to make it so much easier to expand that it is almost a requirement to do PE efficiently, in my opinion. So if you are serious about PE, spend 5 to 10 minutes doing some kind of massage mechanics before you pump, and you're going to get such better results. It's almost a night and day difference, at least with the temporary expansion you get. It's going to be a lot less skin-based edema, and it's going to be a whole lot more swelling in the tunica albuginea, and that's what we want for long-term gains. So massage is basically just making the tissues more pliable before we do anything else to them. Think of it like a warm-up in the gym. You're going to do a bit of stretching and mobility work. This is pretty similar to that, except there's the added benefit that as we need these collagen fibrils in the tunica albuginea, that's the main shape structure of the penis, it will release more growth factors that way. So it's a great primer, and it's going to have a moderate benefit to gains overall. Then expansion is anything that causes internal pressure to build up to cause the tunica albuginea to expand outwards. Quite simply, the easiest way to get bigger is by forcing your dick bigger by either using a penis pump or a clamp to make it hold more pressure than normally intended. And then the optional stuff is going to be hypoxia. That is going to be the lack of oxygen in the tissues, and that releases a huge blood vessel growth response, so that way it is better prepared for a low oxygen environment again. And then retention is going to train the shape of the tissue. So if you're constantly thicker throughout the day, you're going to have a thicker penis long term. There is the idea, I guess it's more like a phenomena, where if the tissue is slowly stretched for an extended period of time, it takes this bigger stretched shape. So if we implement that into PE, we can 100% optimize our routines, and it's going to be much easier for hard gainers, because a lot of times their tissue shrivels up afterwards, therefore they're never really learning to be in that bigger shape. So this is going to be one of the keys for harder gainers to gain long term. So for massage, we're going to choose 2 or 3 of these. Like last time, they are listed from beginners to advanced. There's more of these available. I just think anything else is going to be a derivative of these movements. So blood flow restriction massage is going to be the easiest to do. If you don't know what any of this stuff is, it's going to be probably available on r/gettingbigger. I know the first 3 are going to be in the beginner's guide part 2, all things manual. So you'll get a good proxy with that. And obviously all this stuff is in my books as well, but you know, there is free information available. Anyway, BFR massage, super simple, very effective. Semi-rec bend, same idea. And then we get to something a little more risky with diamond jelks. Again, perfectly acceptable for a beginner to do. Then we get to something called gua sha scrapes, and that's going to be similar to like scraping done to a ligament to help loosen up fibrosis. It's a bit advanced for most people. You won't need it for at least your first 6 months to PE. If you did PE right, you'll never really need it. It's a very specific type of release. And then bundled stretches is going to be the most advanced version of massage mechanics, or what we call tunica release. This is going to be more of a stretch and a brute force method than anything else. The way I teach it is like, since we're doing such a weird twisting angle, it's such a novel stress to the penis, is going to be more of a relaxing effect if you don't overdo the tension. So that's why I'm including it with massage. Again, only choose 2 or 3 of these is really all you need for this, unless you have like a specific issue like steel cord. And then you're going to choose one expansion exercise. I've labeled this from basically easiest to do to hardest to do. So air pumping, by far the easiest thing you can do because the pressure is so easy to measure. All you have to do is get erect, put some lube on, and then pump up to your desired pressure. Water pumping, while relatively easy, you don't know what pressure you're using, so there's a lot less room for error. And then expansive clamping is very hard to get right, especially for beginners because they don't know what high pressure feels like. So it might feel like nothing or extremely painful just by changing one click on a cable clamp, for example, or adding one more cock ring. So I don't really recommend beginners doing expansive clamping. Additionally, I personally think all pumping is going to be more effective than any kind of clamping just because we have full control over the pressure. Some people are going to have lymphatic issues that they can't really do pumping because of, whether it be extreme lymphatic responses when pumping or propensity for lymphoseals, that's clogged lymphatic channels in the penis. So like expansive clamping works. I just don't think it's overly effective, especially not as effective as some subreddits make it out to be. And then finally, mod jelks. The main issue of mod jelks is user error as always. So how much do you squeeze? How far do you move up? And then when your hand starts getting tired, it makes it very hard to pull it off consistently and with some form of progressive overload. Well, progressive overload is overrated. In the beginning few months, you're going to need some kind of progressive overload while your tissues adapt that fast. Again, you're only going to choose one expansion mechanic. Now, hypoxia, remember, this is optional. There is only really one thing you can do with hypoxia, and that is hypoxic clamping. So the difference between hypoxic clamping and expansive clamping is hypoxic clamping is a 10-minute set once, while expansive clamping is a 5-minute set, anywhere from 5 minutes to 60 minutes in total time. So either 12 sets or 1 set. Expansive clamping is going to mimic pumping. Hypoxic clamping is going to mimic blood flow restriction therapy. This is going to be the best thing you could do for increasing erectile function quickly when you have a lot of collagenous tissue to hold the structure of the penis, for example, but you need more blood holding tissue to push out that bigger erection. So if you're like a lot bigger with a cock ring on, that means you probably need more blood holding tissue to make it easier to make these bigger erections. I personally have not done hypoxic clamping in probably the past 8 to 10 months. And another caveat is any kind of pumping for more than 2 minutes at a time is going to have some kind of like hypoxic response. So like if you do enough pumping, that's probably enough hypoxic stimulant that you don't need hypoxic clamping. But like with interval pumping in particular, it's very limited in hypoxic effects. So like you probably want to add in hypoxic clamping as well. Retention. Okay, now some of this has some length specific stuff on this. So we're going to skip sleeves and we're going to skip piss pools. All day stretchers might actually have a use for girth though, because it's holding you near that erect shape, and then like that chronic pull on the dick essentially is going to help you stay chubbed up throughout the day, especially if you just pumped. So while useful, I find all day stretchers to be a pain in the ass. And remember, I sell this shit at peakmusclephysique.com, not plugging you to buy a retention sleeve from us or a retention strap. I'm just saying I have a vested interest in you buying this stuff, and I don't think it's worth it in a lot of cases. More importantly, I think there's just more effective stuff later on in the list, and we're moving on to feeder sets. Now, feeder sets are just pumping more often. So you're going to have a working session where you pump at a slightly higher pressure for a longer time, ideally with interval pumping because that breaks down collagenous tissue better than traditional pumping. So feeder set's going to be a 10-minute set of traditional pumping at about 70 to 80% of your working pressure. The best part about this is that 1, it causes chronic dilation, and then 2, it pulls in fresh nutrients, and that's going to be one of the main issues with penis enlargement is the lack of nutrients. We're dealing with an avascular tissue in the tunica albuginea, ironically, since it's near so many blood vessels, but since it has such a low nutrient supply, it's going to be very slow growing. So if we can just up that intake by like 10 to 20%, we could potentially see 10 to 20% more gains right there. Then what I personally do, and what I think is by far the most effective retention training thing, there's a bit of risk involved, but feeder sets with a cock ring right afterwards. So anytime I pump, I'm going to be wearing a cock ring for about 10 minutes afterwards. And this does a few things. First, the feeder sets engorge you, and then the cock ring kind of teaches your flaccid to be relaxed in this big bloated shape. Since there's no pressure holding it that way, the tissues begin to kind of just mold to the bloat with the cock ring. So like your flaccid is going to take off if you do this consistently. I will wear this cock ring after every pumping session. So basically I'm not giving my tissues a chance to not be inflamed. So I'll 10 minutes pumping AM, cock ring, 10 minutes following. By 2, when I do my PE, I guess it's not 2 anymore, but you get the idea, around noon, do the same thing again, and I'm even more bloated and have the extra fatigue from my main session. And then come 6-7 p.m., I'll do another set of pumping, put the cock ring on, and I am practically completely dilated all day to at least some extent. And then when I go to bed, that dilation doesn't go away. So it's like a compounding interest effect. And that's why I think it's so effective. You don't give your dick a chance to go back to baseline shape. Now, the issue with this is there's going to be an increased risk of lymphatic issues since they're putting pressure on the lymphatic channels quite frequently. When you put the cock ring on, it could cause some kind of blockage to build up. I've personally never had lymphatic issues. I think roughly 5 to 10% of people might have issues with lymphatic systems in general. So if you notice like any weird bumps start on your penis, for example, after doing this kind of training, stop. It's a sign that you're developing something called a lymphocyte, and you're going to need like 1 to 4 weeks to let it fully drain out. And then you can't really mess around with cock rings that much. So you can do regular feeder sets, but you probably can't wear a feeder sets plus a cock ring right afterwards. But again, it's going to be a small population of you that will have an issue with it. It's just something you want to keep in mind. The real issue with feeder sets plus cock ring is that it's going to increase rate of discoloration. So it's going to cut off blood supply minutely to the skin, and that's going to increase the chance of discoloration that way. But discoloration is really easy to treat. It's a bit of exfoliation over a few periods of months, and then you're just going to pull up literally like the stains in your skin with discoloration. So it's very easy to fix. The main like permanent discoloration is since you have more blood vessels in your skin, your dick's going to be a bit redder. That's like actual discoloration from PE. Anything else is going to be easily worked out over an extended period of time. On to guidelines. So we're going to do 5 to 10 minutes of massage, followed by 10 to 30 minutes of expansion. Intervals are better than static pumping in this case because we're trying to break down as much collagen as we can, or I guess fatigue as much collagen as we can. So the more often we load the tissue or strain the tissue, the more likely the collagen is to buckle under the pressure, and then that's going to release growth factors. So what we're going to do is try to do a lot of sets to maximize collagen fatigue. This is going to be anywhere from 5 sets at the beginning of 2 minutes to 15 sets of 2 minutes, and you can play around with the rep ranges based off of how much you swell personally. Then we're going to do 10 minutes of hypoxia if we've done PE for more than 6 months in total. This is so we know what the pressure feels like, and like then we can actually start seeing the benefit from it. With hypoxia, we're only going to need this 2 to 3 sessions a week. And then finally, retention is going to be based off of what you can do in a day. Frequency, okay? Frequency and progression. So working session, 4 to 6 days a week. So like your big set where you do your interval pumping and all the massage, you're only going to do that 4 to 6 days a week. And then we're going to do retention every day. And like if you want to get crazy, you could do a feeder set in place of your normal routine. The main goal here with these feeder sets is to do 70 to 80% the working pressure. We are not trying to fatigue the tissues. We are trying to get them to stay bloated long term, so that way the tissue lays bloated and bigger and thicker long term. Only go up in weight or time. What I really meant to say was only go up in pressure or time when expansion is not hit. So after your first 6 months is when you can start caring about this stuff more. But you want to be about 4 to 8% thicker after each session. Again, there's a calculator on peakmouthphysique.com in the tool bin section so that you can get this number very easily. So basically your rec size before pumping, followed by your size pumping with a cock ring afterwards. So like get erect, put a cock ring on, measure that. That's going to need to be between 4 to 8% bigger, depending on how much edema you have. If you have minimal edema, meaning you're super veiny, 4%. If you have a moderate amount of edema, 8% is going to be a good range. So safe pressures are going to be anywhere from 1 inch of mercury to 15 inches of mercury, or 1 kilopascal up to like 50, 51 kilopascals. There's a lot of talk about needing higher pressures than necessary, but let's think about it this way. If your dick is already having a pressure event while erect, there is no real reason to 4 to 5x it. For example, let's say you have a 5-inch pressure variance right now when you're erect. Well, if we do 5 inches of mercury on top of that, we're at a 10 inches of mercury pressure being applied to the tissues of the penis. So we're effectively doubling how much pressure is being applied to the penis. Then we can go up to 10, we're at 3x pressure. And if we go up to 15, we're at 4x pressure, just because we started at positive pressure, 5. Pumping is technically negative pressure. So that variant between negative 15 and 5 is gigantic. So while some people think you need a lot more pressure, keep in mind that you need to pay attention to what your own body can respond best to. Best practice is start between 5 to 7 inches of mercury, and then you can play around with it as you progress with PE. You'll need slightly more pressure as you go. But remember, guys, I've been doing this for about 10 years now. I do anywhere from 8 inches of mercury to 12 inches of mercury. And when I first start PE up after a break again, I can only handle 5 inches of mercury of pressure. So like, just be careful when starting out. You can listen to whoever you want, just use some common sense. Just because they can handle 17 inches of mercury doesn't mean you can handle 17 inches of mercury. Now, I alluded to this already, but the sweet spot seems to be 8 to 12 inches in mercury. My business partner, Hank, had made a recommendation that you want to shoot for about 12 inches of mercury. I think that's a little bit high, but like, it's within normal means. So like, you can work up to that, but pay attention to how much edema you're having. If you're having a lot of edema, that's going to be like puffiness under the skin. That's a sign that it's too much pressure for your dick to actually respond well to, so dial it down a bit. All right, guys, so I did just give you a lot of what was in my book, just not how to do this stuff or like the actual routines with it. So if you're looking for that stuff, you can check them out at peakmlephysique.com. Again, link will be in the description below. And if you don't want to pay money for it, that's fine. You can check out all my content here on YouTube. I've gone over most of it in some fashion. And additionally, I do have demonstrations available at r/gettingbigger. You just got to dig for it. They changed things around since I left, so I don't know exactly where they're at, but they are there. And like the video if you liked this kind of content. Subscribe if you want to up your penis enlargement game, and I'll see you in the next one.